Cooperation is a big part of modern politics. A recent summit in Italy sought to cement a partnership with the growing African continent and reduce migration. But can Rome prove the relationship will be a two-way street? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Africa boasts untapped natural resources and a young, dynamic population, but with a deep history of exploitation. Can Italy and Europe show African leaders that this time round it'll be different?
The Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, welcomes delegates representing 45 African states.
Our future inevitably depends also on the future of the African continent. We are aware of this and we want to do our part. That's why we have decided to launch an ambitious program of interventions that is capable of helping the continent.
The plan involves nearly $6 billion in investment in education, training, health, agriculture, water, and energy. Dubbed the Mattei Plan, it's named after Enrico Mattei, the founder of Italian oil company Eni. Africa has huge underdeveloped resources. Almost 40% of new gas discoveries over the last 10 years were found in sub-Saharan Africa. But the continent is also rich in oil, gas, precious metals, diamonds, and more. With the war still continuing in Ukraine, Europe's reliance on Russia for oil, but especially gas, has meant pivoting, making African nations particularly appealing. The African Union president welcomed the plan, but said, "I must stress here the need to match actions with words. You will understand we cannot be satisfied with promises that are often not kept." The other big issue for the Italian Prime Minister is immigration. 157,600 boats reached Italy from North Africa last year. Meloni, like other right-wing leaders, has pledged to stop the migrants.
Above all, we need to put an end to the often deadly migratory flows of Africans who have lost all hope of a better life in their respective countries on the continent.
Italy and other European nations have some catching up to do, though. The US and China are the biggest investors in the continent, with many Asian nations rounding out the top 10. And some delegates were upset that there wasn't more input from African nations in where the money should be spent. But it's a big first step for Italy towards an African partnership.
Well, let's meet our guests. In Abuja, in Nigeria, is Kingsley Okeke. He is managing editor at the African Leadership magazine. In Rome, in Italy, is Valeria Gianotta. She is an Italian academic. And here with me in the studio is Gaurav Sharma, who's an energy market analyst. You're all very welcome to this edition of Roundtable. Valeria, I will come to you first. What's Giorgia Meloni's game plan here with this African strategy?
You know, Italy has been pretty much dependent on the Russian gas, but after the eruption of the war between Moscow and Kiev, Italy has been very active in trying to diversify the sources, and it sealed many important agreements with North African countries, moreover, especially actually with Algeria. And currently, almost 40% of the Italian energy comes from Africa, which means something. Besides that, another important topic, which is very crucial for Italy, and it has been very crucial for Meloni along her electoral campaign, and also when she came to power at the end of 2022, is the migration. So the migration issue is a very hot topic nowadays. In Italy, we have been constantly seeing the increasing of immigrants, illegal immigrants coming to the Italian offshore. I think in the 2023, the total number exceeded 160,000 immigrants, and there is a problem of sustainability. So along the African plan, Italy aims to contain the migration throughout an approach that Meloni calls not predatory approach, but a sort of win-win approach based on equality, by helping the African states throughout investment. And already Rome has been pretty much active in applying development projects in some critical areas such as education, energy, economy, environment, and water. When it comes to migration, also Italy has been pretty much active within the frame of European Union, but also unilaterally in trying to contain the flow by training, for example, the coast guards in Tunisia and in Libya. And in this frame, I do believe that it's pretty much important, the meeting that just a couple of weeks ago Meloni had with President Erdogan in Turkey. And Meloni directly addressed a specific request to the president of Turkey by asking to help to control the migration flow coming from Libya.
Let's bring in Kingsley at this point, Valeria. Just bear with us. Kingsley, so we can see what's in this for the Italians, or certainly what they want. Europeans and their legacy in Africa, I mean, over the decades and centuries, it's not good. How do the Africans feel about this?
Well, thank you very much. And of course, it was up to a great start. I think Valerie has, has captured the essence, of course, or what you can describe as what is in it for Rome. And like you mentioned, Europe has had somewhat of a checkered history with most countries in the continent. And so you'll see that some of those relationships oftentimes are viewed with, skepticism. And, the chair of the African Union, the president of the African Union made this very clear during the conversations in Rome to say that what he said actually was that Africa is tired of promises and that they are ready to move on to concrete terms. What can be deduced from that, because it's double-barreled, is that we've heard rhetorics for far too long, and we also have seen the history that most of the European countries have with Africa. So we're not holding our breath. We want to see actions and concrete plans before we can begin to determine if this is a success story or if it is one of those numerous engagements that we are called every year to, be it in the US, the UK, or other parts of Europe, and nothing comes out of it. But something very important needs to be said. Of course, we know countries, European countries with very, very terrible history in Africa. But Italy, of course, doesn't really have that kind of baggage in the continent. That's why this particular summit for most African leaders, was some sort of, let's look at it and see what comes out of it. As you may know, up until, say, in 1945 or thereabout, that's when the history, records Italy's engagement in Somalia, in Ethiopia, in what do you call it, the neighboring country of Ethiopia.
Eritrea.
Those are some of the places where Italy had footprints in Africa. And of course, for Ethiopia, it didn't end well. But beyond this countries mentioned, you wouldn't find their footprints in major African countries that are actually very, very outspoken in terms of their relationship with their colonial past. So you find that the story in, say, West Africa, their story in East Africa, and their story in some part of South Africa, it's not so terrible. So you understand why there seems to be a lot of optimism, as it were. There are countries, of course, in Europe that when they call, it will be difficult to convince a lot of citizens in the continent about their genuine intention about development. So, but for Italy, I think there's a bit of optimism, as it were, with the relationship.
Thanks, Kingsley. Gaurav, there's huge pressure on European countries now to source energy that is not Russian. Is Maloney onto something here? I mean, it's the logical step to look towards Africa.
Most definitely, and it's quite opportunistic, if I may say so. So the Maloney administration, they are trying to position themselves as the middlemen and women in terms of the Europe's energy mix. Now, numbers don't lie, and I am a numbers geek. 30%, close to 30% of Italy's natural gas needs are met by Algeria. There's another 10, 20% of it from Qatar, from other sources. But if you take it on a pan-European perspective, 10% of Europe's needs are now being met by Algeria, and it's going to rise. Now, the Algerians are going to chair the Secretary General of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum is an Algerian gentleman, and they're going to host it, and they have the Secretary Generalship. So the Maloney administration swoops in, tries to put some markers down. They say that, look, for starters, domestically, she plays to her own audience, says that she's dealing with the whole socio-political issue very pragmatically. At the same time, she's ensuring her country's energy security, as well as that of Southern Europe, by positioning herself, saying, look, I'm approaching this very realistically, very pragmatically. The GECF is going to meet in Algeria. Algeria has its chair. We have some ties. And as colleagues alluded, they have few of the colonial baggage that some of the others, the French, the Spanish, etc., carry with Africa. So in some ways, she has positioned herself very strategically and quite pragmatically, and she's going for it.
So you think this could be a genius move?
I definitely think so, because also the timing it's no coincidence the GCF is meeting. Now, let's be clear. The GCF is not a gas OPEC. I mean, that was their ambition when they all came together. This is not some kind of gas producers cartel coming together. And let's not forget the United States right now is the leading LNG exporter in the world as we enter 2024. So at this moment in time, it appears both pragmatic and strategic in equal measure.
Valeria, back to you. I want to talk about migration in Italy. I've been to Sicily. I've seen and followed the migrants' trail from Sicily onto mainland Italy and further north. How big an issue is this domestically in Italian politics? And is Maloney onto something here as well by tackling it perhaps at source?
Actually, it's very big. And it seems not sustainable any longer. Yesterday as well, we had an important trial of related to the smuggle or human trafficker, let's say, directly from Turkey towards, collecting people from the North African and then landing to the south of Italy. And unfortunately, migration is pretty much connected, or it's perceived at least connected to security and safety in Italy. And I will say that Meloni has stressed this a lot along her electoral campaign, and she was very tough on this. On the other side, once she got to the power, she moderated her tone and also her approach to migration. She had to come to terms with the European regulations on that. And Italy is doing, as I said before, her part within European frame, also by training coast guards in Tunisia, Libya, and by signing a bilateral agreement with some important partners in terms of migration. Recently, some criticism arose after the signing of the agreement with Albania, in containing the immigrants and in opening up some hosting centers entitled to identify the immigrants and dealing with the procedures. When it comes to the Africa plan, of course, one of the pivot issues is just containing or regulating the migration. And also one of the priorities, just the readmission of the immigrants that they are considered not regular in Italy, or they got denied the residency permit, the readmission to the origin of the state they are coming from. So, as I said before, by providing some numbers, before 2022, the number of illegal immigrants coming to Italy was around 100,000. it arose to almost 160,000 in 1 year. And this is a problem. There is a lot of discontent overall within the country because, when you deal with some economic fatigue, unemployment, and also security issues, migration becomes a very hot topic. And we are afraid that along this, the far-right parties, further right than Meloni, may arise further. And also there is a problem of delegitimation towards Meloni. Giorgia Meloni belongs to a big coalition of parties made by center-right, right, and more populist parties. And sometimes arises the doubt that Meloni is not supported enough by the member of her coalition as well.
Thanks, Valeria. Kingsley, is there a bit of naivety on the Europeans' part here, thinking that, by maybe boosting economies in Northern Africa, that migrants will stop wanting to come? Because in my experience, these are extremely driven people who have lots of different reasons for leaving their homelands. Can you see this plan actually in any way reducing migration into countries like Italy?
Well, I think I wouldn't use the word naivety, because looking at the root cause of most of this migration, they're economic migration. People looking for opportunity to make their life, to advance their lives, and if anything, right, I think the focus on investing in the country or countries as a strategy to deter most of the migrants from looking for other options to to better their lives might be a step in the right direction. I say this because if you look at the context, of migration, as it were, you find that not everyone, statistics have also shown that, from speaking to a lot more Africans in diaspora, there's a rising case of, depression amongst them. And the root cause, obviously, will be there's some kind of dislocation from the home country. Anyone who is doing absolutely well and can be guaranteed, security, job security as it relates to the security of lives and property, and is able, of course, to put food on his or her table, the chances of migration reduces. We're not saying it eliminates migration. We're only saying, and I think what we've all agreed now is that the total elimination of migration will be somewhat of a pipe dream, but we can reduce it drastically by trying to invest in solving some of the root causes of migration. I like that, what featured prominently in the conversation in Rome was to invest also, of course, in agriculture, infrastructure, as some of the key, areas of interest or focus for the plan. But what I actually, have a little concern about is the funding. I mean, if you look at the amount that is budgeted initially for this program, we're talking about close to about $6 billion US. I mean, if you look at it, it's not enough, but whether or not it's a good start, I would say it's a good start. But looking at the fund and what needs to be done, I think that it's like a drop in the ocean. And if there is going to be any conversation or whether that plan might deter, I think it will go a long way, because there is also a general conversation now around people. I think a few weeks ago, we were having a discussion on a different forum where some that have emigrated to the UK now, because of the challenge of fitting into the system, and also what they were promised versus what was on ground, they realized that even getting back to their country was better. I think there's a greater interest that we're seeing, especially, I'm just using UK as an example, and some members of the diaspora electing to go back to their home countries to see how they can eke out a living than remaining where they do not have support system. And if you know, of course, the culture, our culture in Africa is such that the family unit is a major cardinal part of who we are. So the ability to stay within a community that supports you is something that is priceless for Africans. So
Thanks,
if
Kingsley.
you place economic advantage
Thanks, Kingsley.
and also place,
I want to bring Gaurav in.
will-
Gaurav, so the overall strategy of this in terms of energy, what will success look like for Italy and for Giorgia Meloni?
I think if you geopolitics, let's examine the geopolitics first. Europe, not just Italy, finds itself in this position because of the interventions that have been made in recent years. Now, if you go all the way back to Gulf War II and we look at Iraq, then we look at intervention in Libya, then we look at intervention in Syria, control of the borders were lost. Some of the energy security associated with these countries, we're not just talking migration, but energy security as well, was lost. Now, we can debate the merits of whether Saddam Hussein was good or bad, or Colonel Gaddafi was good or bad, or same goes with Assad, till, for minutes and minutes, and we'll long exceed the broadcast. That's not what we're debating. What we're debating here is, why does Europe find itself here? And there's an easy explanation. Now, within those confines, the situation has to be gotten handle of, so has the energy security. Now, from the energy perspective, Meloni has to tread very carefully. You cannot go to a region and say that we crave your natural gas, but at the same time, you're not doing a good job of manning your frontiers. So that's so she's trying to strike a delicate balance while at the same time keeping her domestic political constituents
Is
on
she doing
board.
a good job?
So far, she's given the right sound bites. We shall see how it all emerges. And she's also very clever. She's cognizant that it is not an OPEC-like situation with the GECF, that she can play. After all, Russia is a member of GECF. We shouldn't forget that. And the Qataris are there as well, whom the Italians are also trying to strike bigger partnerships than the ones that currently exist. So I think from an energy perspective, getting Algeria, getting Tunisia on board to a greater extent, while at the same time being cognizant of the sensitivities of the region is paramount for her.
Thanks, Gaurav. Valerie, a final question to you. Just give us an indication how Giorgia Meloni is doing domestically. And I would point out that, Italy, the high turnover of leaders, will this strategy and policy in Africa last?
Well, Giorgia Meloni is working a lot and she's traveling a lot. And one of the assets is that she brought back the foreign policy to the Italian agenda, because for a long time, Italy did not have a very proactive and pragmatic foreign policy plan. And I do believe that this Africa plan is a good example, is a good proof, despite many criticalities related to funds, related to interlocutors, and also related to the stability of some African countries as well. But Meloni already, after she was appointed, she went before in Algeria, then in Ethiopia, then in Mozambique, in Congo, and she's keeping traveling. 2 days ago, she was in Japan, and this means a lot for us due to our geographical location as well. She is playing a pivoting role within European institutions, but also fulfilling the gap that some European states have left. For example, France and Germany, they've been historically pretty much active in some crucial chessboard. And Italy, under Meloni, is trying to do this. Of course, when it comes to the domestic level, many issues are still there, mainly related to inflation rate, which is more a systemic problem, I would say, nowadays, economy and employment, but the macro indicators are positive. In this regard, there are improvements that, even if they are small, but they mean a lot for us. As I said before, the main problem is made by the support that Meloni will receive within the coalition. Now, there is also the turning issue of her candidacy for the European elections. So we are all waiting for this in order to understand what will happen, if she really would like to run for the European Parliament or not. Of course, as well, many issues are on the table. Migrations is going to be one of the crucial issues for us, also related to our geographical location. But I will say that more or less, Meloni came to power because the Italians were sort of tired of the management and tired of witnessing every now and then a regular crisis. Almost we did not have a government for more than 2 years, and then we had to run again for elections. So we believe that despite everything, Meloni is able to keep the balance, and it's sort of our last hope.
Valeria, thank you.
To
and to Kingsley as well, and Gaurav here in the studio. The clock has beaten us. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Search for Roundtable TRT World. But for now, from me and Brady and all of the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.